Pretty quiet here in Mission Control Houston, as well as obviously aboard Dragon and the International Space Station, as this is a fully autonomous flight, and everything continues to go well for Dragon and its arrival this morning. Again, Dragon has reached waypoint 0 and is making its way to waypoint 1, 220 meters above the International Space Station and its intended destination this morning, which is the space-facing hatch on Node 2. So with that, I'm going to send it back over to Hawthorne for a status update. Kate and Duke?
Thanks, Leah. Continuing to follow Dragon's progress as it gets closer and closer to the International Space Station. We're now just 0.45 kilometers away from the ISS. And as Leah mentioned, slow and steady wins the race. Now, there are teams supporting this mission from multiple locations. This is Johnson Space Center, located in Houston, Texas. This mission control room is staffed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Team members are trained in a variety of disciplines and monitor all station systems. In addition to this control room, we have the mission control room here at SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California. That's the view there on the left-hand side of your screen. That is where our teams are monitoring Dragon and checking in on all of its systems. And then, of course, the Axiom control room on the right-hand side.
Yeah, right there for Axiom Space. Our team is there at Mission Control in Houston as well. It's pretty fantastic. From this secure facility, we have live access to all the voice, video, and data from the ISS and can work alongside their NASA counterparts to run on-orbit operations and monitor every aspect of the mission in real time. It's led by what we call our Axel, or our Axiom Operations Lead. And there are various positions around the room for research, communications, medical, integration, stowage, timeline operations, etc. It's a pretty significant step in our journey as a company to expand access to low Earth orbit, as it's only the 12th ground segment partner for the ISS program. So through this facility, we are enabling our customers in the global community a front row seat to the work being done on station.
So as you can see, lots of people supporting this mission from all different locations. It really is a team effort to execute these integrated operations successfully. And part of the reason is, as you can see, it's not just the 4 crew members that are inside Dragon Freedom right now approaching the space station. It's the whole integrated International Space Station team as a whole. Once the Ax-2 crew arrives on station, there will actually be 11 crew members total, and it's going to be pretty exciting. Like Leah said, a full house, but the Ax-2 crew is going to be super busy. They have a lot of science and research planned, and they will also be contributing to the station as well as the other crewmates that are up there with them.
Absolutely. This crew has a very full schedule well on station, and actually a lot of that time will be focused on some pretty fascinating efforts. For the sake of this conversation that we'll have right now, the science that they're doing is organized into a few categories like life sciences, physical sciences, tech demonstrations, etc. So with physical science, this includes some radiation protection research as well as some storm-related research, helping to create rain, cloud seeding, really fascinating stuff like that, and as well as enhance our understanding of dangerous thunderstorms. There's actually a phenomenon called transient luminous effects, which are upper atmospheric lightning or ionospheric lightning.
And it's awesome that research could potentially help operations at Kennedy Space Center. As we saw yesterday, there was an anvil cloud rolling in, and it's really interesting how this research that the Ax-2 crew will do could potentially feed back into space operations on the ground.
Absolutely. A very full circle moment right there. So by the time we're launching Ax-3, we will have those data back and we'll be ahead of the game. So on the tech side of research being conducted, this crew will also demonstrate ways to automate some of the tasks that take up precious crew time, things like transferring data or tracking where supplies and materials are on board the space station. There's also an effort to make communicating with Earth easier. So at the heart of Axiom Space is the mantra to build history, to expand access to low Earth orbit for all. And so we're dedicated to creating partnerships with companies that you wouldn't typically expect to hear about going to space, to grow the volume of those who can conduct meaningful research and research on board and outreach as well about science and everything else included in that. So a lot going on up there, and they're certainly going to have their hands full once they dock, which we should be seeing shortly here.
Yeah, we're very much looking forward to it. Look at this. This is our first view inside the Dragon capsule. I love this view. So on the left-hand side would be our commander, Peggy Whitson, and on the right-hand side of that view was pilot John Schaffner. Now, this view is also very cool because this is looking at the International Space Station from the Dragon.
What a great shot.
Yeah, it's just incredible that we can get these live views and see what Dragon is seeing as it is approaching the ISS.
I love living in the future.
Like we've mentioned before, we are heading to the Node 2 Zenith port this morning. We have passed through waypoint 0, which is the 400-meter mark, which is 400 meters away from station. We're heading up and around over the station to waypoint 1, which is about...
Dragon station on the big loop. Expect reconfiguration of the C2V2 return link shortly.
Dragon copies.
Station copies.
So that was SpaceX core David Huang just letting the crew know of this upcoming event, referring to C2V2, which is the common communication for visiting vehicle. And that's basically just the link for the visiting vehicle, in this case, Dragon Freedom. But yeah, this view is over the shoulders of our commander and pilot. And I love that you can see what they're seeing. In the center, we can see that they are following along with the upcoming events. The views on the far left and far right panel will illustrate which thrusters are firing when. So I don't really see any, we can see a little bit of light flashing. So if you look at the far left panel and the upper right-hand corner, we saw some illumination there indicating that the Draco thrusters were firing. And one thing that I love about our views as we get closer to the International Space Station, the views that we will get from the ISS looking at Dragon, we should actually be able to see those Draco thrusters firing as Dragon is autonomously steering itself toward that Zenith port. Now, when we say autonomous, it's truly what that means. Dragon is doing all the calculations and steering and flying automatically. It is flying itself. That being said, our pilot, John Schaffner, has the capability to take over manual control at any time if necessary. But it is incredible to be able to see what they're seeing. Oh, and that view on the left-hand side there, we can actually see those thrusters, as I mentioned. It almost looks as if Dragon is like spitting out a little bit, and it's just really cool to be able to see that propulsion system in action as Dragon is flying itself to that Zenith port. And I love it with those two views that we just had because it's Dragon looking at Station as well as Station looking at Dragon, which always kind of reminds me of the Spider-Man meme
Oh,
of them
yeah.
pointing at each other.
It's a very meta moment.
Mm-hmm.
In that image on the right, you see our Commander Peggy Whitson on the left, Pilot John Schaffner on the right, and out of frame our mission specialists Rihanna Barnawi and Ali Al-Karni. Likely also monitoring all these events. Everyone on board this Dragon is probably very, very anxiously awaiting this moment of docking. Ending nearly a 16-hour transit to get to the ISS after launching.
Now we are roughly 20 minutes away from hitting that approach 1, that waypoint 1, which, like I mentioned before, is 220 meters away from the International Space Station. And we can see that the crew has their visors up. We don't require them to put their visors down until they're closer to the space station for that docking procedure. So they're still hanging out, continuing to monitor Dragon's progress. As we said before, once the 4 Axiom-2 crew members get on station, they're going to be there for 8 days, and they're going to be very busy. When you're on station, your schedule is packed with science and research, sleeping. Your sleep periods are scheduled to ensure that everybody's getting appropriate rest, your meal times, and then, of course, you have to build in some exercise time as well. But yeah, the crew will be very busy once they get on station. So these final moments before they actually arrive might actually be very calm and restful because, like we said before, the crew right now, they are monitoring, they are keeping an eye on Dragon systems, and of course keeping in contact with the integrated operations teams from all 3 mission control centers that we mentioned before. Once again, this is a live view of the International Space Station from Dragon. It almost looks fake. It's so clear and beautiful. As we get closer, you should be able to make out more clearly the various vehicles that are docked with the International Space Station. Once we get closer, I definitely want to keep an eye on to those various ports. As we mentioned, we did a port relocation maneuver for the Crew 6 capsule.
Dragon Station on the Big Loop. C2V2 link reconfiguration complete.
Dragon copy. C2V2 config complete.
As I mentioned, we did a port relocation maneuver for the Crew 6 capsule, which is Dragon in Denver. It was relocated to the Node 2 forward port, and we should be able to see that as we get closer. And I just love it when there is a Dragon capsule getting a view of another Dragon capsule that is on station. We had that view during the Crew 6 docking, if I remember correctly. So this is a live view coming to us from the International Space Station of Dragon Freedom as it approaches. All right, so as we are continuing to get closer to the International Space Station, we are heading towards that waypoint 1. Let's check back in with Leah over at Johnson Space Center to hear how things are continuing to progress with the International Space Station's preparation for Dragon Freedom.
Hi, Kate. Hi, Duke. Thanks for carrying us through a little bit of that. And yes, that's no moon. That is Dragon approaching the International Space Station. As you heard, we've reached waypoint zero, that 400 meters away from the space station. We're just a little bit below that now. But as you can see, we've made quite a bit of movement. Our previous view of Dragon had the Earth in the background. Now we have space in the background. The spacecraft has moved out in front of the International Space Station, still less than 400 meters away, about 380 meters right now, but we're moving up to waypoint 1. And again, waypoint 1 is about 220 meters away from the space station. It'll be directly above that Node 2 zenith or space-facing port. We have the opportunity to pause here, check out any systems if needed, and we expect arrival at waypoint 1 in about 10 minutes. Once Dragon reaches waypoint 1, the next stop is waypoint 2. That is only 20 meters away from the International Space Station, so that's when we hope to get that crystal clear view of Dragon Freedom and its 4 crew members inside. We do conduct a hold at waypoint 2. This is to make sure that we are properly aligned with the docking target on Node 2, also known as Harmony. After reaching waypoint 2, Dragon will slowly but surely move in and dock with that port, conducting a soft capture first before the hooks begin to drive and complete a hard capture. Then it takes about 2 hours until Dragon hatches are ready to be opened and the 4 new crew members make their way aboard the space station. Now 350 meters away from the station. Again, this is Dragon Freedom. It was named that by the Crew 4 crew that visited the International Space Station. Spacecraft keep their names after being named by the crew, so this one will always carry the name Freedom regardless of who's flying on board. On the International Space Station side, things continue to move smoothly. Again, we have NASA astronaut Woody Hoberg in the cupola along with UAE astronaut Sultan Al-Nayati. They're monitoring Dragon's approach. It is a fully autonomous flight for the visiting spacecraft, meaning there is no action required on part of the crew. However, they do have the ability to take control if needed, as well as the crew aboard the space station can send commands to Dragon to retreat if necessary. But we're not expecting any of that this morning as things continue to move smoothly, now 330 meters away from the orbiting laboratory. On the space station side, the solar arrays have been configured. Again, teams here in Mission Control Houston will command the solar arrays into a position, we call it being feathered. This keeps any loads from being imparted on the solar arrays themselves from any plumes that come from Dragon as it makes those fine-tuned maneuvers. We are in a satellite handover again with the tracking data and relay satellite systems, but a great shot here of mission control at SpaceX in Hawthorne, California. Again, we are in integrated operations now that we are inside the approach ellipsoid, that 4 kilometer by 2 by 2 kilometer invisible oval that helps us monitor all of the arriving and departing spacecraft at the International Space Station. And on the right-hand side of your screen, you've got Mission Control Houston. These teams work around the clock, 24/7, to monitor all of the station's systems. Leading the teams this morning is Flight Director Marcos Flores. And communicating with the astronauts aboard the International Space Station is Capcom, or Capsule Communicator, Justin Cartledge. On the left now, you can see the Axiom Space Flight Control Room. They are monitoring the flight as well. They'll remain on console this week to help the crew members execute all of the research and the payload work that they have planned. Additionally, they'll be conducting several downlink events with various media and other STEM organizations here on Earth. Now just 290 meters away from the space station and closing in. Again, slow and steady. We are less than 1 mile per hour as we see Crew Dragon move toward the International Space Station Zenith port. Once we reach that, it'll be waypoint 1. We hope to see that in about 5 minutes, and we're tracking docking again this morning at 8:10 a.m. Central Time, so just about 20 minutes from now. So look back at what has brought Dragon to this point. Less than an hour after liftoff last night at about 5:23 p.m. Central Time, Dragon executed the phase burn. This was the first of those 5 major burns. This raised Dragon's orbit using the Draco thrusters, and about 7 hours later we had the boost burn. This put our crew in an orbit where Dragon's apogee, or the highest point of its orbit around the Earth, is 10 kilometers lower than the space station. After that, we execute the close co-elliptic burn, and this puts Dragon on an orbit roughly co-elliptic with the station. So it means it maintains that orbit about 10 kilometers lower than the station all the way around instead of just at apogee. The transfer burn occurred at about 2:47 a.m. this morning, Central Time. This is where we raise Dragon's apogee again. That's the highest point of its orbit to just 2.5 kilometers lower than the station. We want to make that co-elliptic one more time, so we round that out with the final co-elliptic burn. That was at 3:34 a.m. Central this morning, maintaining the constant orbit about 2.5 kilometers below the station. We also saw the approach initiation burn just at the start of today's broadcast. This really begins the final stages of Dragon's rendezvous with the station, and we started integrated operations between the Dragon control team in Hawthorne and the space station flight controllers here in Mission Control Houston. This approach initiation brought us up to waypoint 0. Waypoint 0 is 400 meters below the station. This is the first checkpoint during the approach. We have now entered the approach ellipsoid, that first boundary of monitoring the arrival and departure of visiting vehicles. Of course, we didn't even have to hold at that 400 meters. All of the systems checked out, and Dragon has continued its approach to waypoint 1. This happens when we are about 220 meters away from the space station. We're currently 240 meters away, so we're getting very close, and that 220 meters at waypoint 1 puts us on the docking axis, meaning it's directly above the docking port. So we're heading toward the zenith port of the International Space Station's Node 2 module, also known as Harmony. Currently docked to the forward port, we have Dragon Endeavour, which brought the Crew 6 crew. So once Dragon is
Dragon
only 20
station
meters
on the
away,
big loop. Approach 1 and soft capture ring extension will begin shortly. Dragon will continue approach to waypoint 2. Reminder that manual impulsive retreat recovery is not permitted.
Dragon copy.
Station copies.
and confirmation that the spacecraft has arrived at waypoint 1. Again, we have the opportunity to hold here. It's 220 meters away from the International Space Station, specifically in line with the docking axis on the zenith port of Node 2. And you can see some of those thruster plumes coming from Dragon as it fine-tunes its approach using those service section Draco thrusters. A great view of those thrusters firing on Dragon as we are at waypoint 1, 220 meters away from the International Space Station, specifically directly above the space station. And inside Dragon right now, we have our 4 private astronauts. Peggy Whitson, the commander, pilot John Schaffner, Rana Barnawi, and Ali Arkhani.
Block Bravo. With you on the big loop. Prime range 208 meters and decreasing attitude as expected. We copy and concur from the ground.
Beautiful view for a moment there. We have of Dragon, this courtesy of Cronus. Cronus flight controller here this morning is Brian Crisp in Mission Control Houston. Dragon's thrusters continue to fire. We are now less than 200 meters away from the space station. We have passed through waypoint 1 as well as the keep out sphere. And the keep out sphere is that 200 meter radius around the International Space Station, another invisible boundary that helps us monitor our arriving and departing vehicles. The next pause for Dragon will be at waypoint 2. This is a hold point. That's 20 meters away from the International Space Station when we move in toward final docking. In this view of Dragon Freedom, you can see the hatch or the nose cone is opened and a good view of those 4 forward bulkhead thrusters. Those are used for the larger burns. We are now using the 12 service section Draco thrusters. These are for more fine-tuned attitude maneuvers, especially as we get closer to the International Space Station. The nose cone protects those thrusters as well as the docking mechanisms aboard Dragon. We're expecting arrival at waypoint 2 in about 8 minutes. And again, looking for docking this morning at approximately 8:10 a.m. Central Time. Dragon Freedom is now 164 meters away from the International Space Station. So while we are moving less than 1 mile per hour, we are continuing to close in on the destination for the Ax-2 crew.
Protect Dragon on the big blue. Visors are closed for all 4 crews.
Copy, Dragon. Visors are closed.
As we've mentioned earlier, the Ax-2 crew are in their suits and in their seats. We got that view over their shoulders this morning. They do not have to wear their suits for the entirety of the flight. When they are not in these dynamic operations periods, they are welcome to take those off and get into some more comfortable attire specifically for their sleep portion of their flight. However, now they are in their suits. They've conducted suit leak checks through the umbilicals that connect to the spacecraft itself. These also provide communications and cooling for the astronauts. And as you heard Commander Peggy Whitson just report down to the ground, the visors have been closed on the suits, so they are preparing for docking. And again, we're looking for that about 10 minutes from now. We do have some time and some hold time that we can conduct at waypoint 2 if needed. We can wait until lighting conditions are preferred for Dragon to move in for its final docking. Once Dragon flies in and makes contact with the International Docking Adapter, we will have soft capture. This is when the soft capture ring retracts, and sensors will indicate it's time for 12 hooks to drive in place. Once those hooks have fully driven, we'll have hard capture, and that firmly secures Dragon to its new home on the space station. Now just 130 meters from the International Space Station, everything continuing to move smoothly for Dragon.
Station on the Big Loop, our review of steps 5 and 6 is complete and ISS is ready for docking.
Houston copies.
We are in another satellite handover and expect to regain video of the crew aboard Dragon as well as from the International Space Station shortly. However, things
Dragon
continuing
station
to
on the
check
Big
out
Loop,
here.
soft capture ring extension complete.
Dragon copy.
Station copies.
Station Houston on the Big Loop. At waypoint 2, Dragon will briefly pause to align for docking, then automatically resume approach.
Station copies.
We are less than 100 meters from the International Space Station. Currently, Flight Director Marcos Flores here in Mission Control Houston is polling all of the team members in this room, conducting their go, no-go poll for docking. Just heard confirmation
Dragon
that
station
Mission Control
on the
Houston
Big
is
Loop.
go.
Confirm crew readiness for final approach. Ground has pulled go for approach 2 and will be commanding approach allowed shortly. As a reminder that once Dragon is inside the crew hands-off point, retreat and breakout are not permitted.
And the Dragon crew is ready to go for docking, and we copy on the crew hands-off point.
Station crew copies and we are ready for final approach.
A lot of voices in the mix there, the last one being from NASA astronaut Woody Hoberg, who's in the cupola monitoring docking this morning. And good words from all of the teams that they are go for docking. Dragon is now less than 60 meters away from the International Space Station. We're expecting arrival at waypoint 2 in 2 minutes. Again, that'll be the 20 meters away from the International Space Station, directly above the Node 2 Zenith docking port. We do have a pause at waypoint 2, and they can hold there for an extended period of time if need be, if they want to wait for lighting conditions to change or to check out systems any further. However, things continuing to look good this morning. Currently, the International Space Station and Dragon are flying 262 statute miles over Russia in an orbital nighttime. Dragon now 34 meters away from the International Space Station. We also heard confirmation earlier from teams here on the ground that the soft capture ring is properly extended. This will be the first step in the docking process. Dragon will make contact with the International Space Station, and that docking ring, or the soft capture ring, will retract, pulling it in until it's time for the 2 sets of 6 hooks, so 12 hooks in total, to make the hard capture to the International Space Station. Standing by for arrival at waypoint 2. Dragon Freedom and the Ax-2 crew have arrived at waypoint 2, just 20 meters from the International Space Station. Teams here are all on the ground are all go for docking, as well as aboard the International Space Station and Dragon itself. Again, this graphic just a look at what we have seen so far, most recently this morning when Dragon arrived at waypoint 0, 400 meters away from the space station, moving into waypoint 1, 220 meters directly above and on the docking axis. We have now moved down from that 220 meters into just 20 meters from the International Space Station, directly above the Node 2 Zenith port. This is a hold point for Dragon.
Houston on the big loop. Dragon is on final approach and is go for docking. Monitor per steps 5 and 6 in 1.102. Dragon approach and retreat monitoring.
Station copies in work.
Again, we do not have video feed from the International Space Station or Dragon at this time, but teams continue to monitor its approach to the space station itself. We have now left that waypoint 2 hold point of 20 meters away, now about 16 meters from the International Space Station. Dragon Freedom and the Ax-2 crew now moving at 0.2 miles per hour. All 4 crew members suited and in their seats, preparing for docking.
Meters.
Copy, 10 meters.
As you can hear, the Dragon crew are able to view the status of their docking on the crew display screens, reporting that they are now 10 meters and actually less than 10 meters away from the Node 2 Zenith or space-facing port on the International Space Station.
Meters.
Copy, 5 meters.
Still moving 0.2 miles per hour, Dragon Freedom is now 5 meters away from the International Space Station. Again, we do not have video feed of the spacecraft at this time, but team members are able to track its status, and everything continues to go as planned. The crew is now 3 meters from the space station.
Meters, chop.
Copy, 2 meters.
Hands off.
CHOP stands for the crew hands-off point, now 2 meters from the station, standing by for
1
docking.
meter.
Copy, 1 meter. Soft capture confirmed.
And we have confirmation that the Axiom-2 crew has docked to the International Space Station at
retraction in
8:12
progress.
a.m. Central Time. That self-capture ring now beginning to retract and pull Dragon in toward the International Space Station. Docking coming as the space station itself was flying 262 statute miles northeast of Japan.
And correction on last, we're still waiting on attenuation.
Continuing to get good reports here from teams on the ground. Again, aboard the International Space Station, NASA's Woody Hoberg and UAE's Sultan Al Nayati continued to monitor the crew as well. After soft capture is complete, those 12 hooks will begin to drive and pull Dragon firmly securing it to the Node 2 Zenith port.
And Dragon, now we have ring retraction in progress.
Dragon copy. That's the softest docking I've ever had.
Good words from commander of the Ax-2 mission, former NASA astronaut Peggy Whitson, now flying her third spacecraft after having flown the Space Shuttle, a Roscosmos-Soyuz, and now a SpaceX Dragon. That soft capture ring continues to retract. Again, this is the first stage in docking. Shortly after ring retraction is complete, we will move into the hard docking portion. This is when those 12 hooks, 2 sets of 6, drive and firmly secure the spacecraft to the Node 2 Zenith port. Again, just a few weeks ago, the Node 2 Zenith port was occupied by another SpaceX Dragon. Dragon was relocated by the Crew 6 crew who arrived on that spacecraft from the forward port, or from the Zenith port where Dragon Freedom now is, to the forward port. Again, we expect the Axiom-2 crew to live and work aboard the International Space Station for about 8 days before beginning their return journey to Earth.
Ring retraction complete. Docking sequence is holding for MCS reconfiguration.
We have confirmation that the ring retraction is complete. Next steps for this hard capture will be for those 12 hooks to drive. In addition to the ring retraction and these hooks driving, an umbilical will also be connected from Dragon to the International Space Station. This will allow power to flow from the space station to Dragon itself so that Dragon is no longer relying on battery power, that power being gathered from the solar cells around the base of its trunk. Again, we are in a handover of our satellites for KU, which is what brings down our video. We do have audio communication with the crew through our S-band.
MCS configured, proceeding with hook driving.
Teams reporting that we're properly configured for hard capture. Again, this is 12 hooks, 2 sets of 6. They will drive the first 6, and those are firmly latched. They will then drive the next 6. We do see those first 6 hooks now starting to drive. The first 6 hooks continue to drive in the hard capture process. Again, after these, we'll have another set of 6 before we can officially declare that Dragon is firmly secured to the International Space Station. Everything continuing to go as planned this morning. Again, docking coming at 8:12 a.m. Central Time. We have confirmation that the first set of 6 hooks have now closed and the second set are driving. Again, this view from Mission Control Houston as teams are monitoring the docking of Dragon Freedom to the Node 2
Station
Zenith, our
on the Big Loop
space-facing
on behalf
port.
of the Expedition 69 crew. Peggy, welcome back. John, welcome to the International Space Station. And Ali and Rihanna, ahlan wa sahlan.
Thank you so much for the Ax-2 crew. We're really looking forward to working with you guys this week.
Likewise, we'll see you guys very soon.
And we have confirmation the second set of hooks has closed from Dragon on the International Space Station, meaning hard capture is complete.
Dragon Station, hard capture complete.
I can copy.
And with that call, hard capture is complete. Dragon is firmly attached to the International Space Station. It's home for at least the next 8 days. NASA astronaut Woody Hoberg on the space station side will now move into preparing the hatches for opening. Again, that takes about a 2-hour process. The vestibule needs to be pressurized, the area in between the space station and Dragon. Coming up, the Ax-2 crew will have the chance to doff or take off their spacesuits, maybe get into their flight suits before they float aboard, and we begin our welcome ceremony.
And Dragon SpaceX docking sequence complete. Crew Dragon Freedom, Peggy, John, Ali, Ray, congrats on this historic achievement. Welcome to the International Space Station.
Thanks. We really appreciated flying with SpaceX. It was a lovely ride, and as I mentioned, it was the softest docking I've ever felt. Very well done. Thanks to everyone for getting us this far.
Thanks, Peggy. We do aim for excellence, and on behalf of SpaceX, it's been a pleasure working with you. And just a little bit of trivia for you, this was the fastest launch to dock time for a Crew Dragon, beating our previous record from Crew 4 by just 9 minutes. Ground will be enabling hardline power and comm connections shortly, and you are good to doff suits per procedure 4.012. Ground will be taking cameras external.
Copy 4012 in work.
Dragon on Dragon to ground. No response required. Cameras are external.
Now that all the hooks have driven and the soft capture ring has been stowed, docking is officially complete. The crew is go to doff their suits. That's why the teams on the ground have told them that the cameras are not live at this time inside the cabin. Again, we still do not have video from the International Space Station at this time. It looks like we'll regain shortly. The space station itself is in an orbital nighttime, now flying 261 statute miles over the Pacific Ocean. Again, docking this morning at 8:12 a.m. Central Time. As noted by SpaceX, the fastest docking on record for a crew launch to the International Space Station on Dragon. We also have confirmation that the umbilicals have attached from Dragon to the International Space Station. Again, these allow power to flow from the space station to Dragon, as well as data and other telemetry. When in free flight, Dragon uses power gained from its solar arrays and is stored and used from batteries aboard the spacecraft, so connecting to these umbilicals allows it to rely on power generated from the space station. We'll stay live now that we have docked until our welcome ceremony, standing by for the start time for that ceremony. But this hatch open process takes about 2 hours. A look ahead at the steps that will be happening over the next couple of hours. Again, Woody Hoberg, NASA astronaut on the space station, is prime for these operations and bringing the Ax-2 crew on board. Now that we're docked, he is securing some hardware, and then we'll move into hatch operations. First, he will open the large hatch at Node 2 Zenith. That'll give him access inside the pressurized mating adapter. He will then help pressurize the vestibule. That's, again, the small space between the hatches on Dragon and the space station. Of course, this was previously exposed to a vacuum prior to docking. We need to fill it with air, make sure its pressure is nearly equal with the atmospheric pressures on Dragon and the station.
Com check on the cabin mic.
And Dragon SpaceX, I had you 5x5 on the cabin mic, but I am seeing that you have both ground and ISS set to PTT. Please set it to only the big loop.
Okay, on the big loop, cabin mic set from Dragon.
And I have you 5x5. How me?
5x5, thanks.
Station on 2 for PMA 3 ingress step 1.
Houston is with you on 2.
All right, just looking for your go in step 1.1.
Standby 1, and we are checking on that now.
Station copies.
As you heard, teams on the ground communicating with the crew still aboard Dragon Freedom. Peggy Whitson took a chance to test out the cabin mic rather than the microphones they'd been using in their
Houston,
suits
on the
now
big
that
loop,
they've
you are
doffed
go
those.
for 1.1 of procedure 2.102.
Copy, go in step 1.1 of 2.102.
And that voice being NASA astronaut Woody Hoberg communicating with Justin Cartledge here on the ground, his Capcom, the capsule communicator. That's the person speaking with the astronauts aboard the International Space Station. Woody is now stepping through some procedures, including he will get access inside the pressurized mating adapter and then pressurize the vestibule. We want to make sure the pressure is almost equal with the pressures on board Dragon and the station. He'll use a small valve on the station's hatch to slowly introduce air into the vestibule. Flight controllers here in Houston will monitor the pressure and temperature readings inside and verify that everything is leak-free before we get ready to open the hatches. Again, it's about a 2-hour process to get everything pressurized and checked out before we open the hatches. And following that hatch open, we'll have a welcoming ceremony with all 4 Ax-2 astronauts, as well as our 7 crew members living aboard the station. So if it's not too early for you to do some math, yes, that is 11 people that'll be living aboard the International Space Station for at least the next week.
Houston Station, node 2 overhead hatch open.
Houston copies.
Again, we are live covering the arrival of the Ax-2 crew to the International Space Station. This is the second private astronaut mission that has visited the International Space Station following Axiom 1 flight last year. Our crew members aboard Dragon Freedom today include former NASA astronaut Peggy Whitson. Up until now, she has spent 665 days in space, so she's looking to add to that total. It's more than any U.S. astronaut and more than any woman in the world. She's joined by pilot John Schaffner. And the 2 mission specialists representing the Saudi Space Commission are Ali Al-Karni and Rayana Barnawi.
Houston Station on 2, we're ready for step 2.2 on your go.
Checking. You are go at 2.2.
Copy, go.
As we hear NASA astronaut Woody Hoberg stepping through the procedures with the ground's go, he will begin pressurizing the vestibule shortly. In the meantime, NASA astronaut Frank Rubio continues to conduct some hardware servicing on the space
Dragon,
station.
SpaceX on the big loop. If desired, reference procedure 4.400 for monitoring vestibule pressurization.
Confirmation from teams on the ground that vestibule pressurization has begun. Again, this is the small space between the Dragon hatch and the space station hatch. We want to bring that up from vacuum to about 14.7 psi. That's about the same pressure as the International Space Station, approximately the same pressure we're used to here on Earth. Astronauts on the space station live in a mixed nitrogen-oxygen environment, again, very similar to what we have on Earth.
And Dragon station on the big loop, no response required. ISS power connection established.
Houston, station on 2, step 2.4, A pass pressure equalized at 13:39 GMT.
Houston copies 13:39 GMT.
You can see some movement, and we have our view back of Dragon. As we see a sunrise in the background, this view of Dragon Freedom with the Ax-2 crew aboard docked to the Node 2 Zenith port on the International Space Station. Again, that docking coming at 8:12 a.m. Central Time. The crew inside are now out of their suits. They are preparing for ingress to the International Space Station. Again, this is a process though, so we are pressurizing the vestibule, the space between the two spacecraft. And if you see some color changes, that's because the International Space Station and Dragon are now flying into an orbital sunrise. They are 268 statute miles over the South Pacific Ocean. Now that they're docked, these two will travel 17,500 miles per hour together, seeing 16 sunrises and sunsets a day. So the Ax-2 crew is certainly in for a treat for their planned 8-day stay. Here in Mission Control Houston, teams are handing over from the Orbit 1 shift to the Orbit 2 shift. We have had Marcos Flores as our flight director this morning. He will be handing over to Vincent Laporte. Again, Woody Hoberg aboard the International Space Station is leading the team's...
Freedom, Houston, stand by for hardline audio config.
Freedom is standby.
NASA astronaut Woody Hoberg working to pressurize the vestibule, the space between the hatches. Again, this takes about 2 hours before the crew members float aboard the International Space Station. All 4 Axiom 2 crew members still in Dragon Freedom, as you see there, docked to the Node 2 Zenith port. Once they float aboard, they will conduct a welcome ceremony with all crew members before heading into a safety briefing. These private astronauts trained for many contingency scenarios down here on the ground, but the teams aboard the International Space Station will help show them different locations and procedures now that they are on orbit. Later today, the Dragon Freedom crew will work to transfer some cargo from Dragon to the International Space Station. That includes some of the scientific research they'll be doing this week, as well as hardware or food needed.
Freedom Houston on the big loop for a comm check. Hardline audio configuration is complete.
Freedom has you loud and clear on the big loop hardline.
Good news.
And Dragon SpaceX on the big loop, permission to come on board with cameras.
come on board now, but we'll probably have to ask you to go away again in a little bit. Welcome aboard.
Copy that. We'll keep them exterior until you're ready.
Okay, thank you.
Recently, you heard a call from Mission Control in Hawthorne at SpaceX headquarters, checking with the crew to see if they could turn cameras on the spacecraft. They'll hold off for a little bit longer on that, but we still have all 4 crew members aboard. It has now been 41 minutes since they docked to the Node 2 Zenith port, making their official arrival at the International Space Station. On the space station side, NASA astronaut Woody Hoberg is preparing the APAS hatch for opening.
And SpaceX Dragon on the big loop, just to let you know, we've got all four suits drying. The shortest timer is at passing 7 minutes right now.
Copy all. 4 suits drying, and 7 minutes have elapsed. And Dragon with suits drying, I can give you a go for sections 1 through 3 of 4.400.
Copy 1 through 3 of 4.400.
Again, you're watching live coverage of the Ax-2 crew arrival at the International Space Station. The crew docked Dragon Freedom to the Node 2 Zenith-facing port this morning at 8:12 a.m. Central
SpaceX
Time.
Dragon,
And that
this
view
is Ray for food inventory and water inventory.
Copy that, Ray. Ready to copy for inventory.
203, 5 bottles. 207, 4 bottles. For food, 305, 1 meal and a snack. 313, 1 meal and a snack. 307, 1 meal and a snack. 315, 1 meal and a snack.
Copy that, and to read back, we have 5 bottles from 203, 4 bottles from 207, 1 meal and 1 snack from locations 305, 313, 307, and 315.
Good copy. Thank you.
Thank you.
As you just heard, Saudi Space Commission astronaut Rayana Barnawi reporting out the inventory aboard Crew Dragon. Everything is meticulously tracked aboard the space station and Dragon as well, so she was reporting which meals and snacks had been consumed during their approximate 16-hour flight from launch last night at 5:37 p.m. Eastern Time to docking this morning at 9:12 a.m. Eastern Time. Again, you're watching live coverage of the Ax-2 arrival at the International Space Station, the second private astronaut mission to visit the space station following the Axiom-1 flight last year. Currently aboard Dragon Freedom, which you see on your screen, attached to the station's Node 2 Zenith port, are Commander Peggy Whitson, pilot John Schaffner, and mission specialists Ali Alkarni and Rihanna Barnawi. On the space station side, NASA astronaut Woody Hoberg is working to
And
pressurize
Dragon
the...
SpaceX on the big loop for procedure 4.400.
Go for 4.400.
Hey, so we're getting close to finishing the leak check, but you have a go to perform Section 5 for the docked waste system configuration.
Okay, go for Section 5. We'll try and get all the other activities out of the way first and get that in work.
Copy all.
We heard Peggy Whitson earlier say that the crew has doffed their suits. They are now in probably their flight suits ahead of heading into the International Space Station. We're expecting that around 10 a.m. Central Time for those hatches to open. They are drying their suits currently, just keeping them in good shape ahead of a trip home. They're planning on about an 8-day stay aboard the International Space Station. However, several things can affect that departure date, mainly the weather at the landing location. SpaceX has a number of select landing locations off the coast of Florida. And we watch for things like wave height or wave cadence, as well as wind speeds, to ensure that the crew have the safest and most comfortable landing possible.
Station Houston on the big loop. We have a good leak check. ISS is go to complete vestibule equalization and open the APAS hatch at step 3.1 of procedure 2.102.
All right, station copies go in 3.1.
For those of you just joining our coverage of Axiom-2 crew in our SpaceX Dragon Freedom capsule, which is what you see there on your screen, has successfully docked to the International Space Station. In fact, we had a new record time for SpaceX operations. We actually beat the Crew 4 record from liftoff to soft capture. Our record time now is about 15 hours and 35 minutes from liftoff to soft capture. So basically the most efficient and fastest transit to the International Space Station from Pad 39A. That's a beautiful view there of that Dragon Freedom capsule. This is docked at the Node 2 Zenith port. The Crew 6 capsule, until about a couple weeks ago, was docked to this same port, and we did a port relocation maneuver with the Crew 6 crew to move it down to the Node 2 forward port. By doing so, we were able to clear this Zenith port for the Ax-2 mission, as well as the upcoming CRS-28 cargo resupply mission. Although it might look stagnant if you look at it quickly, we can see planet Earth rotating slowly behind, or rather under, the Dragon capsule and the International Space Station. There at the bottom of the screen, you can kind of make out the Canada arm, which is the robotic arm that the crew on board station will utilize in order to remove cargo from the unpressurized section of Dragon located in the trunk, which is essentially the top half, in this orientation, the top half of the Dragon capsule. Of course, when we are sitting at the launch pad or other conventional views of Dragon, it's the bottom half of Dragon. But really, it's that half black, half white cylindrical portion of Dragon that we see there. This view is also great because you get a really clear view of the nose cone and all of the hardware that the nose cone protects during the launch phase. Of course, we got some ambient noise here at SpaceX headquarters as our first shift operations are well underway. During the ascent phase, that nose cone will be closed, and that protects the forward hatch as well as the forward bulkhead Draco thrusters. So right now, the Axiom-2 crew, they have taken their suits off. We heard the call out earlier that the suits are drying. And as you can see, the Dragon capsule is docked, and they have completed pressurization of the APAS hatch. So we are making great progress. But talking about the crew, let's get to learn a little bit more about them in case you may have missed our introductions earlier in the broadcast, as we've been going for a little bit while. So let's learn more about the Ax-2 crew.
Yeah, it's always good to get a little refresher on our Ax-2 crew here. The Ax-2 mission is commanded by retired NASA astronaut Peggy Whitson. Born and raised in Beaconsfield, Iowa, she was inspired along with the world when she watched the Apollo 11 crew walk on the moon. She has since become the most experienced American astronaut and one of the most decorated. Whitson flew 3 long-duration missions to the ISS and has more cumulative time in space, 665 days, than any U.S. astronaut and more than any woman in the world. She has conducted 10 spacewalks with over 60 hours of time and has performed hundreds of research experiments on board the ISS. Not only is she the commander for this mission, but Peggy also serves as the director of human spaceflight for Axiom Space.
The pilot for Ax-2 is private astronaut John Schaffner. Born in Alaska and raised in Kentucky, Schaffner is a STEAM education advocate, business pioneer, and lifelong space enthusiast. A pilot since the age of 17, John has over 8,500 flight hours holding commercial, instrument, single-engine, and multi-engine ratings in land and sea aircraft, as well as helicopter. He also holds ratings in former military jets and high-performance radial engine aircraft. As an athlete, John has years of competitive experience in water skiing, cycling, whitewater kayaking, hang gliding, skydiving, and base jumping. John trained as the Ax-1 backup pilot, and during this mission on Ax-2, plans to invest a lot of his time in STEAM education activities aimed at empowering educators and inspiring teachers.
And representing the Saudi Space Commission and serving as a mission specialist, Ali Al-Qarni was born in March 1992 in Sabt al-Alaya, Saudi Arabia. Ali is fluent in English as well as his native Arabic, and as an Air Force captain, has 12 years of experience flying on multiple aircraft, primarily on the F-15SA in service to the Royal Saudi Air Force. Ali graduated with a Bachelor of Aerospace Science degree in 2013 from King Faisal Air Academy in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia.
Also representing the Saudi Space Commission and serving as a mission specialist, Rayana Barnawi, or as we hear her identify herself as Ray on comms, was born in September 1988 in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. Rayana has a master's degree in biomedical sciences from Al Faisal University in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, and a bachelor's degree in biomedical sciences from Otago University in Dunedin, New Zealand. She is fluent in English and Turkish, as well as native Arabic. She has been a research lab technician since 2013 in the Stem Cell and Tissue Re-Engineering Program at King Faisal Specialist Hospital and Research Center, and located in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia.
And there they are, the Ax-2 crew. We are so excited for them to now be docked to the ISS, and so proud that they've made it this far after all their training. This is a really wonderful moment to be celebrating their journey to space.
Yeah, obviously Peggy, a NASA legend, has spent years training to go to space. Our 3 formerly space newbies, now that they are up there and now docked to the International Space Station. Can't really call them rookies anymore. But yeah, all 4 of them have been training extensively for this mission, and it's so great to see that they get to use it now.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. And on those cards, you may have seen their patch on their flight suits. And since the beginning of the space race in the 1960s, a custom patch has been used to represent and identify individual missions and their crews. It's also a long-held custom that these crews influence or even outright design their own patches, injecting them with symbolism and personal elements to commemorate their journey. This crew has continued this long-standing tradition with their official Ax-2 mission patch, so let's take a look. The Ax-2 mission patch highlights the beauty of space, hope for the future.
Station on 2, the pass hatch is open with negative condensation.
Oh.
That is great news.
Houston copies.
Sounds like a hatch open update. Okay, continuing on this patch. This patch highlights the beauty of space, hope for the future, and the important role of the ISS to unite the best aspects of humanity. Shown prominently are the mission name, Ax-2, the family names of the crew members, and the flags of the United States and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the two nations represented on board today's flight. There are 5 shapes drawn as constellations, and these represent the crew's intention to focus on inspiration, education, and teaching through STEAM education initiatives. And so there's a constellation for science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. The arched path leading from Earth to space is colored lavender, which is culturally significant in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, symbolizing hospitality. That arched path and color also reflect KSA's desire to be part of the space sector and position itself as a contributor to the global space community. Then, naturally, the space station is central to the image as the destination of this crew, while Earth is featured with prominent horizon lines symbolizing optimism, hope, and inspiration. Just as you see this mission patch worn by the crew on their flight suits, this patch is currently adorning the walls of Axiom Space's mission control in Houston and is placed in a position of honor everywhere this crew is being supported for the duration of their mission.
As someone that is an engineer, but I have a background in music and theater and art, I have a personal appreciation for just how evident and apparent the emphasis on STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts, mathematics. It's been a long morning. I think I got those letters in the right order. But yeah, it's so great to see all of that represented so strongly on the Ax-2 mission patch. I love it. It's one of my favorite mission patches that we've had. Now let's turn it back over to NASA's Leah Cheshire, who is standing by at Mission Control Center at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas, for an update on space station operations. Leah?
Thanks, Kate and Duke. Yes, we are still here in International Space Station Flight Control Room at Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas, continuing to monitor the arrival of the Ax-2 crew and their eventual welcome to the International Space Station. Again, we docked at 8:12 a.m. Central Time this morning, so a little over an hour ago, to the Node 2 Zenith, or space-facing port, which is where you see the crew now. They are flying over the country of Chad, 256 miles above Earth. And those calls you heard about the hatch, those are the A-Pass hatch and the vestibule hatch. NASA astronaut Woody Hoburg is stepping through hatch procedures this morning. He's currently in the A-Pass hatch, and I looked it up to make sure to get it right for all of you. A-Pass stands for Androgynous Peripheral Assembly System. I think it's pretty clear why we call it A-Pass, keep it short and sweet. But that hatch has been opened. He is inside, and he has also opened the vestibule hatch. So the Dragon hatch is not open yet. We've still got some things that we need to work through on the SpaceX side as well as on the NASA side to make sure that we're ready to welcome the Ax-2 crew members aboard. After launch yesterday at 5:37 p.m. Eastern Time, Dragon made its way to the International Space Station, conducting a series of burns and checkpoints along the way. This view inside the International Space Station, you're getting a look at NASA astronaut Woody Hoberg. This is his first flight to the space station. He arrived as a member of Crew 6 earlier this year. He is preparing the space station for entry of the Ax-2 crew. As you can see, he's working on some venting. That tube will go from the space station into Dragon and kind of help equalize the and balance out the air and the mix of the air that's in the space station to what's currently in Dragon. Again, the Dragon hatch is not open yet. We are remaining live all the way through their welcome ceremony when we see the 4 crew members, Peggy Whitson, John Schaffner, Lee Alcarney, and Rayana Barnawi, float aboard the International Space Station for the start of their approximately 8-day stay. While aboard the space station, the Ax-2 crew members are going to conduct a plethora of scientific research, as well as conduct STEAM outreach with students and other educational organizations here on Earth. And again, they dock to the Node 2 Zenith port. This is where the Crew 6 Dragon, known as Endeavour, was docked just a few weeks ago. However, it was moved from one hatch to the next.
Houston
So
and
we have 2
SpaceX
Dragons,
on the big
both
loop.
docked to Node 2.
ISS is ready for Dragon hatch equalization.
Houston copies on the big loop. Stand by for equalization. Expect to take 3 minutes. Additionally, ground is a little bit behind on configurations, so expect a slight delay for hatch opening.
Station copies.
Dragon copies.
As NASA astronaut Woody Hoberg gets things ready on the station side, the Ax-2 crew is still aboard Dragon, and they continue to have some steps that they're working through as well. We heard Peggy Whitson discuss the suit drying that's going on, as well as Rayana Barnawi reported down some of the consumables that had been used during the flight, including meals that were eaten. Everything is meticulously tracked aboard Dragon as well as aboard the International Space Station to make sure that it can be accessed when needed. But we are moving along pretty smoothly this morning toward hatch opening. The International Space Station uses GMT as their time zone, so it's about 2:30, 2:28 p.m. Pacific, or sorry, 2B Pacific aboard the International Space Station right now. So Crew members are in the middle of their workday, most of them taking...
Section 5 is complete for the waste configuration.
And copy that, Peggy. Section 5 complete. Any deltas to inventory?
Looking at our timeline, some of the crew members on the space station side are enjoying their midday meal. Of course, after floating aboard, we'll see the Ax-2 crew move into their welcome ceremony, where they get to spend a little time with the other 7 crew members on the International Space Station and discuss their initial reactions to being on orbit and visiting the orbiting laboratory. Afterward, they'll step into their safety briefing and make sure that everyone is aware of the location of any certain safety items aboard the International Space Station, as well as what to do in any event of a contingency. After the safety briefing, the the Dragon Freedom astronauts, the Ax-2 crew, will begin moving some of the cargo from Dragon into the International Space Station side.
Station Dragon Houston on the Big Loop. Big picture update based on what we see for open ground and crew actions. We see that we're about 15 minutes out from hatch opening.
Dragon copies 15 minutes out.
And station copies 15 minutes.
Teams on the ground and teams on the space station continuing to step through their procedures, working toward hatch opening in approximately 15 minutes.
And Dragon
We
SpaceX
are in
on
a
2 for status.
Go ahead, SpaceX on 2.
Hey, was just wondering, do we have a change to inventory due to the waste system flush?
And you have a change to what?
Yeah, to our inventory for water bottles consumed?
No, we actually planned for the change in inventory, but since then, I pulled out one more bottle out of the same bag and 9 that still had bottles left. Actually, make it 2 more. John wants to grab one too.
And copy that. That's 2 bottles from which location?
Section 9, bag 204.
Copy that. 2 bottles from 204. And just checking in, are we able to come back on board with cameras?
Just another minute, please.
Copy that.
We're about 10 minutes away from Dragon hatch opening. International Space Station and Dragon are 261 statute miles over Kazakhstan, about to enter into an orbital nighttime. Again, we see 16 sunrises and sunsets a day, so anticipating another one of those in just a few minutes. You'll see some of the lighting change if we have views outside of the spacecraft. But again, we are tracking about 9:45 a.m. Central Time for Dragon hatch opening. We'll see the Ax-2 crew members float into the capsule and then begin the welcome ceremony. Again, we are in a TDRS handover, meaning we do not have KU band. That is the antenna we use to bring down our video from the International Space Station. So we are anticipating the crew to float through the Dragon hatch at about 9:45 a.m. Central Time. We anticipate having good video at that time, so we'll get to welcome those 4 crew members aboard and see their smiling faces now that they've arrived at the space station.
SpaceX Dragon on 2, you can come on board.
Copy that, Peggy. Bringing cameras back on board.
Dragon, the first two suits are dry, but we're just going to hold on packing them until after the event, if that sounds right to you.
Yeah, copy that, Peggy. We'd recommend opening the hatch first and then possibly completing the task for stowing the suits before ingressing into ISS.
Okay, copy. Will do.
This is a view of Mission Control Space at SpaceX in Hawthorne, California. These teams have been monitoring the flight of Dragon Freedom since launch yesterday afternoon, actually before launch yesterday afternoon. That launch coming at 5:37 p.m. Eastern Time from Florida. A flawless launch, and then about a 16-hour rendezvous to the International Space Station. We got into integrated operations earlier this morning once we crossed through the approach ellipsoid, a 4 by 2 by 2 kilometer invisible boundary around the space station that helps us govern visiting spacecraft and their arrival and departure. Teams here in Mission Control Houston, now on your screen, are being led by Vincent LaCourte, Flight Director. They're working with astronauts aboard the International Space Station and staff this room 24/7, 365 to ensure that those astronauts and the space station systems remain supported. We've had continuous presence aboard the International Space Station for over 23 years now. And we'll be welcoming 4 crew members shortly as part of the Ax-2 mission, the second private astronaut mission to the International Space Station. This view coming from their mission control, also here in Houston, Texas. They'll remain on console all week to monitor the status of the astronauts, as well as help them step through their research, payloads, and any downlink opportunities that they have. And we're expecting to regain video communications with the space station and Dragon shortly. Just a few moments from now, we'll see the Ax-2 crew float through the hatch and bring our total of crew members living on the space station to 11. Everything looking good ahead of hatch opening on both sides, the station and Dragon. We're just standing by to regain video communications before we go for that hatch open so we can ensure we'll see the smiling faces of our 4 new crew members joining the Expedition 69 crew on the International Space Station. Again, we expect them to stay for about a week before returning on Dragon Freedom back to Earth.
In Dragon SpaceX on the Big Loop, S-band will be deactivated shortly. Dragon to ground will no longer be available for comms. Please verify PTT destinations are set to ISS.
Wilco.
Teams in Hawthorne speaking with the crew still aboard Dragon Freedom, letting them know that shortly they will not have the ability to communicate from or through the Dragon to ground loop itself. However, they will start using the loops aboard the International Space Station to talk with teams here in Mission Control Houston as well as in Hawthorne. Again, we are getting close to hatch opening. Docking this morning occurring at 8:12 a.m. Central Time, so about an hour and a half ago. It was a very smooth ride to orbit yesterday, launching at 5:37 p.m. Eastern Time, and then again about a 16-hour transit, the fastest on record for a Dragon crew to the International Space Station. Take a look inside Dragon Freedom as the crew members of Ax-2.
We have all the suits stowed and feed procedure 40.12 complete.
Copy all, Peggy. 4.012 complete.
Again, this view of the crew inside Dragon Freedom, our 4 astronauts who have arrived as part of Axiom Mission 2, the second private mission to the International Space Station. Up in the center of the screen, still sort of in her seat, that's former NASA astronaut Peggy Whitson, the commander of this crew. Over near the window, you can see Ali Al-Karni, representing the Saudi Space Commission. Down below him, holding onto one of the footrests, is John Schaffner, the pilot. And just off camera, you can see her hand right now. That's Rayana Barnawi, also representing the Saudi Space Commission. We are standing by for hatch opening of Dragon Freedom. Again, you're looking live inside Dragon Freedom as we prepare for the hatch to be opened and these 4 crew members to float into the International Space Station on what is the second private astronaut mission to the orbiting laboratory. They will remain at the space station for about 8 days before undocking and returning to Earth. While they're on board, we will have a total of 11 people living and working aboard the space station. Again, this crew launched at 5:37 p.m. Eastern Time yesterday, docking this morning at 9:12 a.m. Eastern Time. The hatches are configured to be opened, so we are just standing by for that final go call to the crew. We'll remain on air through their welcome ceremony, where you get to hear some words from the crew themselves on their flight, as well as what they plan for this time on board. Afterwards, we will wrap our show as the crew steps into their safety briefings and eventually gets to work aboard the space station.
Dragon SpaceX on 2 for hatch open.
Go for Dragon.
Hey Peggy, so just big picture. Following hatch open, we'd like you to complete Part C of 2.102 prior to station ingress. We're still ahead of the timeline, so we've got some time to complete these tasks in the nominal sequence. With that, you are go for hatch opening per decal, followed by the remaining actions in procedure 4.400, section 6.
Copy. Hatch open per decal and section C.
That's affirmative, Peggy, and section 6 of 4.400 as well.
Yes, copy. Section 6 of 4.400 as well. Thank you.
And we've got a view here in Dragon Freedom as Ali Al-Karni works to open the Dragon side of the hatch. On the other side of the Dragon hatch is NASA astronaut Woody Hoburg waiting to welcome the crew on board after having completed all of the preparations this morning.
In Houston and SpaceX, Dragon hatch is open.
Houston copies.
SpaceX copies.
At 10 a.m. Central Time, the Dragon hatch is open, preparing to see our crew members float through and join the International Space Station.
Houston, the IMV duct is installed and we are ready for IMV activation.
Houston copies.
Again, Dragon hatch open at 10 a.m. Central Time after docking at 8:12 a.m. Central Time, following their approximately 16-hour journey from the space coast of Florida to the International Space Station.
And Houston Station in the Dragon, we're at step 6.3, ready for the procedures for the Lyle.
Copy that, Peggy. Houston is checking. Dragon Houston on the big loop, you have a go for step 6.3 and procedure 2.102.
Go for 6.3, 2.102. Thanks.
Again, we are preparing for the Ax-2 crew to float through the Dragon hatch and join the space station crew. On the right-hand side of your screen, you see NASA astronaut Woody Hoberg, who has monitored their arrival this morning, first in the cupola, and then worked to prepare these hatches, pressurizing the vestibule, that space between both hatches, and eventually assisting in opening the APAS hatch, as well as then Ali Al-Karni, just at 10 a.m. Central Time, 5 minutes ago, opening the Dragon hatch. Again, this is live coverage of the arrival of the Ax-2 crew to the International Space Station. We are just standing by for those crew members to make their way out of Dragon and into the space station moments from now. UAE astronaut Sultan Al Nayati just floating out of screen on the right-hand side there. He has been working alongside Woody Hoberg this morning to prepare the hatches for the crew to float through, as well as monitoring their arrival. Both Hoberg and Al Nayati arrived as part of the Crew 6 crew and are now both members of Expedition 69, living and working aboard the International Space Station. Teams are also preparing the intermodule ventilation. That was the tube that we saw earlier that Woody Hoberg was working with. They will route that from the station side into the Dragon side to help equalize the atmospheres between both Dragon and station. Currently, the International Space Station is flying 264 statute miles southwest of Fiji. They are in an orbital nighttime, and here we have a great view of 4 of our crew members on the International Space Station. On the far left, that's NASA astronaut Steve Bowen. Down in the bottom left, NASA astronaut Frank Rubio.
Houston on 2, Lyo cartridge is sealed per the decal at 15:08.
Copies.
NASA's Woody Hoberg was on the right of your screen, and in the center, Sultan Al Nayati. Again, preparations to egress Dragon continue. You can hear Commander Peggy Whitson discussing with teams on the ground that they are still stepping through those final checks.
Dragon for procedure. Do you want us to continue on step 7?
Yeah, it's affirmative on section step 7.
Again, hatches between both Dragon and the International Space Station are open. Teams in Dragon, or the astronauts in Dragon, just continuing their final checkouts before moving into the space station side, where they will conduct their welcome ceremony.
Dragon on 2, all the valves are closed, including the PPRV ISO.
SpaceX copies. Thanks.
Again, this is a view from inside Node 2, also known as Harmony. The Ax-2 crew today docked to the Zenith, or space-facing port. There is another Dragon spacecraft docked to the forward-facing port.
That is SpaceX. Dragon configuration is complete at step 8.9 of 2102.
Houston copies.
SpaceX copies.
This crew, part of the 7 that are on the International Space Station, patiently waiting their 4 new crew members to arrive for the next 8 days. Not pictured in this frame, there are also 3 Roscosmos cosmonauts on board, including Sergei Prokopyev, Dmitry Petelin, and Andrei Fedyaev. So with the addition of these 4 crew members about to float on the space station, we will have an 11 total astronauts on station. And we have our first views of the Axiom crew members floating aboard. First is Commander Peggy Whitson rejoining the International Space Station. Next up is pilot John Schaffner making his first visit. Also on his first trip to space, you can see Ali Al-Karni representing the Saudi Space Commission. All smiles as he floats through the Dragon hatch. And rounding out the Axiom 2 crew, that's Rihanna Barnawi, also of the Saudi Space Commission. The crew of the space station is now 11 crew members. Big smiles from Rihanna Barnawi. She is now the first female Saudi to go to space. With Commander Peggy Whitson at the helm, these astronauts are in good hands. Peggy has 665 days already lived in space. She's just adding to that total on this mission. John Schaffner, his first trip to space. Getting some help out from Woody Hoberg, NASA astronaut, who is also on his first trip to space. He's been on the space station now for 81 days. Again, the total number of astronauts and cosmonauts on board the International Space Station now at 11. Three of the astronauts on the space station represent NASA, 3 represent Roscosmos, 2 represent the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, 1 represents the United Arab Emirates. Again, we are standing by for the start of the welcome ceremony. The crew will take some time to do some scene and voice checks and make sure that their microphones are set up properly, as well as that we have them all in frame before going into their welcome remarks. And of course, afterward, we will wrap our coverage before they step into their work and life aboard the International Space Station for the next 8 days.
Station Houston on 2 for Frank and PAO.
Well, with you on 2.
Hey, Frank, just wanted to tag up with you on the PAO event. We're thinking about doing a scene and voice in about 7 minutes from now. Will that work for you?
That'll be perfect. We will call you back in about, and we can even do 5 minutes if you guys want, but we'll call you back in 7 minutes.
Copy that. We prefer closer to 7 minutes as we have a handover in about 5 minutes from now.
Sounds great.
As you heard the Capcom relay to NASA astronaut Frank Rubio, we are expecting a handover. We're expecting that short handover in just a few minutes. We want to make sure that we have great audio and video from our visiting astronauts. So we are holding for that short handover, and then we will start the welcome ceremony. Again, crew arrived this morning at 8:12 a.m. Central Time, the Dragon hatch opening at 10 a.m. Central Time, and then crew members floating aboard just moments ago. Ali Al-Karni, it looks like he already has the hang of things on his first flight to space. The Axiom crew has trained for months in preparation for this mission. The Axiom crew has been training for months in preparation for this mission here at Johnson Space Center as well as at SpaceX, working with teams on the research that they will be conducting as well as learning space station systems. Three countries represented here. We've got Tan Al Nayati of UAE, two Roscosmos cosmonauts, as well as our two new astronauts representing the Saudi Space Commission on their 8-day stay on the International Space Station. Just above Barnawi and Al-Karni's heads, you can see the two EMUs, extravehicular mobility units, used by USOS astronauts on spacewalks. Those have been moved from the airlock to allow a little more space for the Axiom crew during this flight. Of course, we do have 11 crew members on board now, so we have to make some room for sleep spaces. And again, we are standing by anticipating a satellite handover here momentarily. Once we've regained communications, we'll go through some voice checks with the astronauts. And there it is, as expected. That handover from our satellites. We'll do those scene and voice checks when we come back to make sure that we have a picture-perfect view of the crew members before they give us some welcome remarks. This view from International Space Station Flight Control Room here in Houston, Texas. Teams continue to monitor the arrival of our 4 new visitors, as well as all of the systems aboard the International Space Station and the astronauts and cosmonauts that live there. Just over 2 hours now since the Ax-2 crew arrived to the Zenith or space-facing port on the Harmony module, also known as Node 2, that docking coming at 8:12 a.m. Central Time, hatch opening about 26 minutes ago, 10 a.m. Central Time. So we should regain that video and audio communication with the space station momentarily.
And Houston Station on 2 for scene and voice check.
Hey, Frank, we are ready for scene and voice whenever you guys are ready. And as a reminder, you'll be on the handheld mic for today's event.
Okay, sounds good. And let us know if that scene works for you, and then I can do the countdown whenever you're ready.
Frank, if you wouldn't mind, if you could gather everybody into their spots, we'll take a look at the scene once everyone's in place.
Crew members begin to move into their locations for the welcome ceremony. Obviously, we have regained communications through the tracking data and relay satellite systems.
Houston Station on Tuesday again for scene and voice.
Hey, Woody, we just want to get everyone into position before we do our scene check.
All right, we copy. We'll group up.
Like I said earlier, looking at a pretty full house here aboard the International Space Station. We have the crew that will fly on Soyuz MS-23 to return home later this year, as well as the crew that arrived on Crew 6, and now the Ax-2 crew.
Frank, Houston on 2, good scene check. We didn't hear audio on the handheld mic. Can you check the switch position? Frank, we're checking the config on the ground. Stand by. Frank, if you wouldn't mind, give us another long count. We needed to sync things up. Thanks, Frank. We're good on scene and voice. Station, this is Houston. Are you ready for the event?
Houston, this is Station. We are ready for the event.
Please begin the welcome ceremony.
Houston and SpaceX, congratulations on a beautiful launch and a beautiful docking. It is great to have new friends up here. And so on behalf of Expedition 69, it's an honor to welcome our new crewmates. I'll pass it off to the ISS commander, Sergei Prokopyev.
Welcome on board, dear friends. This is very nice to see you here. Expedition 69, so glad to have you here with us on space station, and we looked forward to your arrival here at least 1 month, and watched yesterday your amazing launch, and this is outstanding returning first stage of Falcon 9 on the launch pad. Is so grateful, and congratulations with successful launch and your docking. And as for me, this is a very great honor to work next with Peggy Whitson, so most experienced and decorated astronaut in the U.S. Astronaut Corps. And congratulations, new astronauts, Rihanna, John, Ali, and my congratulations, all of us. We have now 11 persons on the space station, and my big congratulations of Saudi Space Commission, and I'm sure you will have a great achievement in the future in your space exploration. Thank you so much, and welcome aboard.
Thank you so much, Sergey. You left it on. Thank you so much. We really are excited to be here. It was a great launch, a great ride. We had a lot of fun on the way up, and we're really excited to get a lot of work done up here. But it's great for me to come back personally. It does feel like home. You might need some help though for a while. I could help you with some of these things, but it's a lot of fun to be here and to see this place again. It means so much to me, and I think it actually brings people together just by being here. So I wanted you to meet my crew, so I want each of them to talk a little bit about their objectives and why they're here, and maybe a little bit about the ride. It's on.
Hi, I'm John Schaffner. Part of the Ax-2 crew. It's an honor to be here and make new friends in space. The first time I've done that, for sure. So, I've been dreaming or working toward this since I was 8 in a young astronauts club. Watching Gemini pilots do their thing. So we had cardboard boxes pretending to be Gemini pilots. So you'd think having that much time to prepare, I'd have some better words than this, but. It's having a chance to be here and fly with this amazing new crew, Ali and Ray, and of course with Peggy Whitson, the awesome Peggy Whitson. And to join Expedition 69 is a fabulous thing for me, for anyone to be able to do. I'm honored. I'd like to thank NASA for creating the opportunity and opening the doors for private and commercial space exploration, and also the ingenuity of SpaceX and Axiom and to develop the next level of space platforms and space access for everyone. I want to say thanks to my lovely wife for those magic words. One day she looked on the news and said, "Look, you can finally go to space." She was right. Thank you for that, Janine. Otherwise, we look forward to some great work for STEM education outreach and some amazing science that we have going on up here, and I hope you guys will follow us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. This is Ali Al-Karni. If you just allow me to start speaking in Arabic first. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله وشكرا. هذه الكلمتين هي اللي تصف شعوري هذه اللحظة. الحمد لله بتيسيره وفضله وصلنا إلى محطة الفضاء الدولية. شكرا لحكامنا بقيادتهم وحكمتهم ونظرتهم في المستقبل وتطور البشرية. شكرا لاهتمامهم بمجال الفضاء. شكرا لأسرتي على الدعم اللامحدود اللي حظيت منهم. شكرا لزوجتي وأهلي جميعا. شكرا لهيئة السعودية للفضاء بتحقيق هذا الحلم للناس، وقريبا إن شاء الله سينضمون لنا الكثير بإذن الله. شكرا لناسا، شكرا أكسيوم وسبيس إكس على هذه الفرصة. كانت تجربة الإقلاع تجربة تاريخية، تجربة سوف تخلد في ذاكرتي إلى الأبد وذاكرة اللي معي. صراحة كان طاقم رحلة مميز جدا، وإحنا هنا الآن من أجل القيام بالتجارب العلمية اللي فيها نفع إن شاء الله بشرية، ونعود بنتائج جميلة إن شاء الله. Thank you everybody for the great welcome. It is such an honor and a privilege to be here and meet all of you, as John said, making space friends. So I'm really excited to work alongside with you, all of you, and eager to just share your expertise with me and learn from you. Thank you to our King and his Crown Prince for their support and trust in us. Thank you to the Saudi people, because this mission is not just for me and Rihanna. This mission is all Saudi people with ambition and dreams, and also you can dream big, because in our country, with the support we have, you will be able to reach it. Thank you, everybody.
Hello everyone, so this is Rihanna Barnawi. Also if you allow me, I'll start in Arabic first. تحية طيبة من الفضاء الخارجي. الحمد لله، بفضل الله وصلنا لهذه المرحلة. نحن الآن يعني نعيش حلم ما كنا نتخيل انه هو ممكن يصير حقيقة. الحمد لله، بدعم من الحكومة، بدعم من قيادتنا، بدعم من أسرنا، بدعم من الجميع. هذه الرحلة ما تمثلني أنا لوحدي ولا تمثل بس طموحي، بالعكس هي تمثل كل الوطن العربي، تمثل كل السعوديين. الحمد لله أن احنا جاتنا هذه الفرصة، أن احنا فقط نقدر نوصل الآن لمحطة الفضاء الدولية، لكن بعد كده عندنا أكيد طموحات أكبر وأكبر، منها القمر، منها المريخ. لازم نستكشف الفضاء، هذه هي فرصتنا. زي ما تشوفوا دحين جنسيات كثيرة متجمعة في مكان واحد، فالفضاء هو اللي يجمع كل هذه الجنسيات المختلفة بأفكارهم واستكشافاتهم، معلوماتهم. فالحمد لله ان احنا وصلنا هذه المرحلة مع هذا الفريق الجميل. وصلنا الحمد لله بعد تدريب تقريبا 10 شهور. فهذا التدريب قابلنا رواد فضاء سابقين، قابلنا بيجي ويتسون، قابلنا مدربين دربوا رواد آخرين في ناسا وفي جاكسا وفي إيسا. وفي نفس الوقت التدريب اللي جهزوه أكسيوم واللي جهزوه سبيس إكس، شعور انطلاق الصاروخ صراحة أنا دموعي ما قدرت توقف، لأني حسيت إنه أخذتكم كلكم معايا هنا. فالحمد لله على التمام والكمال. الحمد لله على وجود قائدنا ذو الرؤية الطموحة سمو سيدي الأمير محمد بن سلمان. الحمد لله على وجوده، والحمد لله على أنه قدرنا نحقق هذا الحلم، وهذه أول خطوة، ونستنى بعد كده بإذن الله أشخاص كثير يكونوا موجودين هنا من العالم العربي أجمع. So greetings from outer space. I'm here not only representing myself, but representing the hopes and dreams of everyone back home, everyone in the region. We are here gathering with different cultures and this international collaboration. This shows how space brings everyone together. It brings even different backgrounds. Some of us are doctors, some of us are researchers, engineers, and so on. I'm very happy to be here representing the dreams and hopes of everyone back home, and at the same time I'm very glad that I've received extensive training from trainers who have trained previous astronauts like NASA, JAXA, ESA, and SpaceX and Axiom. I'm very happy to be here, and thank you all for listening. Thank you for letting me share my feelings, and I'm going to live this experience to the max.
Great. Well, we all are excited for all of the new astronauts here, and we have something special. Ray, would you hold this while I pin John?
Oh, wow.
Give him his official astronaut pin. John is the 598th astronaut.
Wow. I don't think I'm ready for clapping yet.
Ollie, I can get it up.
Mic is off.
So Ollie is the 599th astronaut. Thank you. And our little Ray is 600. I'm going to stick myself more than anything. Okay, here we go. All right. So thanks to inviting all of us up here and welcoming 3 new astronauts.
Okay, and that concludes the ceremony. Thank you guys so much. Again, it really feels like the International Space Station up here. This is going to be an awesome week. We're all excited and super happy to have you guys up here.
Station, this is Houston ACR. Thank you. That concludes our event.
Thank you to all participants. Station, we are now resuming operational audio communications.
Copy.
And with completion of the welcome ceremony, another big welcome to the Axiom-2 crew, our second private astronaut mission crew to arrive at the International Space Station. We now have 11 people living and working on the International Space Station. Again, we're looking for those Ax-2 crew members to live and work on the orbiting lab for the next 8 days. We saw docking this morning at 8:12 a.m. Central Time, 9:12 a.m. Eastern, and hatch opening from Dragon to the International Space Station at 10 Central, 11 Eastern. All of this following launch yesterday at 5:37 p.m. Eastern from Florida. It was a smooth ride uphill, approximately 16 hours ahead of that docking today. And again, now we are expecting these crew members to live and work on the space station for about 8 days before beginning their journey home to Earth. So for future updates on NASA missions, as well as what you can expect from the Ax-2 crew on their return coverage, you can keep an eye on nasa.gov. But with that, that'll wrap us up here in Mission Control Houston, and I'm going to send it back to my friends at SpaceX.
Thank you so much, Leah. Excellent coverage from Johnson Space Center, really following along with all the integrated operations that ultimately led us to what a touching welcoming ceremony. Now, with that, we are going to wrap up our live joint coverage of Peggy, John, Ali, and Rayana's arrival to the International Space Station. It's been an honor to support the Ax-2 mission thus far. We wish the Axiom crew a successful time on station, and we look forward to joining you when it's time to bring them back home.
Absolutely. And Kate, I just want to say from launch to docking, it has been an absolute pleasure sharing this desk with you. So thank you, spasiba, and shukran. Over the course of our cruise time on station, we will be providing daily mission updates from Axiom Mission Control to highlight the range of science research and STEAM education events the crew will be conducting over the course of their 8 days on station. Be sure to visit axiomspace.com and follow the Axiom social media channels for real-time updates.
And with that, on behalf of SpaceX, Axiom Space, and NASA, thank you all for tuning in to watch. See you soon.